This wax seal, you can tell, has just barely been touched by the toilet. This is part of the problem with this past installation. We talked about inspecting the flange. As you can see, it is recessed below the tile floor about ½ an inch. That doesn't allow the wax seal to touch and squeeze out and cause a good seal. So what we're going to have to do on this one, we're going to put a flange extension. That's the most permanent solution without replacing the flange. Okay, once you have the toilet out of the way and we inspected the flange we talked about earlier, you go and purchase one of the adder ring. Basically, it's to raise the flange level up to the floor or just a little above. Either one is perfectly fine. We're going to make sure that it's going to sit down squarely on the existing flange, which this one will. The way to tell whether it's high enough, you take just a short level, lay it on your floor, and then see how it is in relationship to the flange. This one's going to be perfect with just one adder ring. Now, you may not think that this thickness would make that much difference, but it could be the difference between it leaking and being a stable installation. The way one wants to do this, now I know some people put silicone caulking between the two. You can do that, but it has to set up, or should set up, before you get it in a wet location. The idea is that we want to be able to use this toilet immediately after we're done. So we use a wax seal that is just flat. All right, it's going to lay on the existing flange, and we're going to set this one on top. We have to drill some pilot holes because the existing flange is metal, and then we're going to just screw it down to the subfloor. You do want to make sure you're using a deck screw or some other water resistant screw. If you use galvanized, some galvanized, or if you use like a drywall screw, it will rust out and you're going to have problems too. So make sure you're using a good quality deck screw. It's always good to warm up your wax seals if it's not summertime. A little more sticky and they don't spread out as easily. And we've already cleaned this off. It may not be pretty, but it is clean. We're going to take the new flange and we're going to line up the bolt slots. So you got to make sure you have them lined up so you can actually get your new bolts in. Then you're going to press it down. All right. Once you get it to that point, you can wipe off some of the interior. And then we're ready to start drilling our pilot holes. I've got everything lined up perfectly. Just want to make sure you're using the right size bit for the screw you have. And again, we're just drilling the metal. All right, so once you get the pilot hole drilled, then you can actually start putting your screws in. So we're going to go ahead and follow through with the rest of them. Get at least 6 in there. There's 6 holes. That's going to keep it good and stable. Go ahead and anchor in the last screw down in. Now I know there are some people that tell you that the bolts will hold the flange extension in place. The problem is because of the fact there's a wax seal between it and the existing flange, you need to make sure that stays solid. And when you screw that down to the existing flange, it's not moving. There's no way for that wax seal to work its way out, and you're going to have a long time repair there. Now on the second wax seal, we always like using one with a horn. It's kind of a funnel. It directionalizes the water and waste straight down in the pipe so you don't end up with any turbulence right there. It will set right on top of the flange extension. You can see I've used brass bolts. They do hold up well. They're proven to last for years and years and years. But at this point, we're ready to reset our toilet. We've got the new bolts. We have to line the bolts up with the holes in the bowl. Once you line those up, you're going to drop it straight down. Now I know the manufacturer shows on their little picture that you should put the wax seal on the toilet and then set it. I found that it's a lot better to set it down on the flange. It's less likely to fall in mid point of setting the toilet, and it also stays lined up better, especially if you're using one with the horn. Another reason to use it. Once you get it set down in place, you don't want to move it a lot. You know by the way it felt that it's squeezing out that wax seal and getting a good seal. We're going to go ahead and put our nuts and bolt washers on there to get it bolted down and stabilized. Okay, now we're basically at the point we've tested the unit out it's flushing well, no leakage anywhere. One always wants to feel around the base of the toilet as well as around the tank, because anytime you pull a toilet and there's movement on the tank, sometimes those gaskets and seals will leak, so be vigilant about checking that. Basically what we're doing now, we're going to cut the bolts down the length so we can put the trim cap on, and that way they'll have a nice clean looking application. I usually will, when I don't have the clip ring available, and sometimes you've got ceramic caps instead of plastic, just a little dab of silicone in there will help it stay in place, and that way nobody's going to cut themselves on there. It's always a good idea, once you've cut that, check that nut just to make sure it's still stable, because that can move it enough to where it can loosen a little bit. We definitely don't want a loose toilet.